Hi, it's Rhonda Kuning here again with another file folder art journaling page. This time it took me forever to record this, so that's why it is so late. But hey, I'm starting off with some watercolour crayons, and I haven't gessoed, it's just straight on the file folder, and basically I'm just playing around. You barely even see this design at the end. I'm just colouring in, practicing doing some swirls and putting some colour on the page. Now to activate the watercolour I'm using some gesso, and that will give me some tooth to the page so that I can then work on it further. I cut out a lot of the videoing because it took so long, so the stuff that I didn't think was important got cut out. If you think it's important, tough. I was the editor, so you're going to see what I let you see, really. I had very big trouble doing symmetrical heart shapes. That's why I'm using a piece of paper to get the shape I want, and it gives me the added bonus of having a mask at the end that I can use later. And now I'm just drawing in the design I have in my head for this page. The basis of this page is a verse from Proverbs about keeping watch on your heart, for from it springs the wells of life. And you can see why I wanted to practice doing the swirls. You can see the ghosting of the previous drawing underneath. Now this is just activating the watercolour crayon with water. I could have used a water brush, but I just used an ordinary brush and some water. And you can see the black is quite dark on there because I've gone fairly heavy-handed on it, but the rest is fairly pastel. I decided to go around the shapes in a watercolour pencil. That's what I'm doing right now, and that helps me to define the shapes and just makes it easier to see where I'm at for the next few steps. I decide that the watercolour crayons really aren't as vibrant as I want, but because they're the colours that I want, I decide to go over it with acrylic paint. But I want to get rid of that white, so I'm filling that all in with watercolour crayon, even though I know I'm going to go over it all again anyway. It just helps define for me what the design is going to look like at the end, so that I can change it if I want to. Because I didn't scribble as dark around this area, that's why it hasn't come up as dark as the black around the heart that I outlined quite heavily. The more crayon you use, the more pigment you use, the darker the colour, obviously. Now this is my really old black gesso. I really need to get some more. Because it's all dry and crumbly, I'm spraying it with water to get the last bits out of the jar, and I end up having to do 2 coats because it's just so out of date that I need to get some more. Now the colours I've used I'll put down on the descriptor, but basically it's some yellow, some red, a couple of blues and some orange and black. And I'm just colouring in the colours where I've got the watercolour crayons down, and shading around the outside with the black just to give the shapes a bit of depth so they don't look quite so flat as they do at the moment. Again, I cut a lot of this out because it's basically just filling in the shapes. Some of the colours I do a couple of coats on. The red in particular is quite transparent, so it needs a couple of coats. The colours I mixed, the greens and the purple, I end up doing a couple of coats of the greens, and I used slightly different colour screens, and you'll notice I use the blues, slightly different colours too. There's two blues I've got on the palette there. One is the cadmium blue and one is the phthalo blue. The phthalo blue is a lot more transparent and it's a darker shade, but because it's so transparent you need to do a couple of coats if you want the darkest shade, whereas the cadmium is a lighter blue but it's more opaque. So there are pluses and minuses for each shade. As you can see, I'm doing a bit of a black outline around each shape and just giving it a little bit of dimension by shadowing it with the black paint. I could have used a Pitt pen for that, but I would have had to wait till all the colours dried and it would have taken longer. And as it was, there was hours and hours of video in this, basically because I wanted to take the time. You don't have to take hours every time you do an art journal page, but you don't also have to do a 5-minute journal page each time either. That's the fun part. You do what you want to do. You can see the yellow I'm using is Indian yellow and it is very transparent. And the good part of that is that you then see some of the yellow that's behind it. The bad part is you see all my scummy brush marks. So, yeah. It's fun. And you'll see with some of these colours I mix a little bit of the black in with some of the colour to create the shadow rather than trying to blend just a black line, because it just ends up looking too harsh if you do that, especially on the narrower areas where you don't have quite so much colour to blend it into, because black is a very strong pigment. And the purple I'm using, it ends up being quite a deep shade of purple, but I didn't really want to use a paler shade, so you don't quite get the depth in that particular shape, but I'm not concerned with that. And as you can see, that's all the colours all coloured in, and then I go over the black gesso with some black acrylic. And it gives it a real intense depth of black because it's got more than one type of black on there. But it also does look quite flat. So then I decide to add a stencil with some gesso, and because I wanted the stenciling to look like it's behind the design, I go around the design and leave quite a bit of space on the lower edges so that it looks like it's in shadow. On the video the white of the gesso looks quite stark, but by the time I'm finished it's not quite so bright, and even the pictures at the end, it still looks brighter than it is in real life. Because it's got the black and the bright colours, the stenciling in this way on this particular design is quite easy because you can see the colours quite well and the black through the stencil. You can even see it on the video here how easy it is to see where the colours and the shapes are. If it was a paler design it would be a lot harder to do this. So now I'm just filling in the shapes just so it looks like wallpaper basically. That was the effect I was after anyway. I think I achieved it. Looks like wallpaper to me. The hard part of doing this is trying not to get the gesso on the back of the stencil, because when you move it then you end up with gesso over the areas you don't want gesso. So you use a very dry brush. And now I'm just using some sprays. I start off with some homemade acrylic sprays, and that's basically diluted paint with some acrylic medium and water. And then I move on to my alcohol ink sprays, and where it's too heavy I just splodge it up with a bit of paper towel. And I'll show you when I'm finished. I use the heart shape to protect my heart on there so it didn't get all spattered. I wanted the contrast of the writing on the heart to be really intense. I'm still not happy with the depth of colour on it, on the heart shape, so that's why I'm using another 2 different colours. I think there's cadmium red and crimson red that I'm using just to create a bit of depth and increase the brightness of the red, because I wanted that to be the standout image on here, and it is quite a busy page, so to make it stand out it really needs to be bright. And there I'm just adding some shading with the black acrylic, and this is what it looks like before I do the doodling. You can see all the spattering, and the gesso has soaked up those sprays really well, and the heart shape is fairly clear. Now I'm using some Sakura pens, some artist Pitt pens, and that's my Bible verse that I've just flashed in front of your face there. It says, "Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it springs the wells of life." And I had a bit of trouble with using the different pens on the acrylic paint. The Pitt pens work reasonably well without too much trouble. You have to really wait until the paint is dry. You need to wait at least overnight, because any decent amount of rubbing will lift the paint, especially seeing as I've used watercolour paint underneath the acrylic. I tried to use different pens on the red, and basically the white pigma pen and the black Pitt pens were the best contrast on the red. But I didn't want it all in the same writing, so that's why I've alternated with the black and the white. The black on the narrower bands that I've done of the red doesn't stand out very well, so I go around it with the white pen. You can see I had a bit of trouble with my blue gel pen there. It leaked, which I wasn't very happy about. I thought the blue would stand out on the red, but it didn't. So I ended up using the black and going around it with the white pigma pen. Now for the colours, you can see I'm using the blue on the orange there. I used the opposite colours on the colour wheels for most of it. There's the blue on the orange. I used the purple on the yellow, because they're the opposite colours on the colour wheel. For the green I used the red pen, and for the blues I used a black, but because the pens are transparent they actually looked blue on the black. Blue on the blue rather. Oh, I'm not going to record this again. So there you can see all the doodling I've done. And it's "Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life." Proverbs 4:23. Lots of doodling on there. See that purple on the yellow? It doesn't look purple, it looks black, but it is purple. And you can tell that I've used the red on the green there, and I went over the purple hope with the red pen to make it stand out a bit. And it's just a whole heap of doodling. It was very relaxing to do, but as I said, it took hours and hours. You don't have to do an art journal page that takes hours and hours, but if you want, that's an idea. I'll see you again next time, hopefully with something shorter. Bye!